thanks all for joining us. And thanks to my colleague Valentina and Berislav that helped us put that together. So very briefly from my side, I think at SEAP, essentially we do three things. Firstly, we have forums for an exchange. For an exchange of best practices. So today is an example how we try to really share best practices from industry and from various sectors. So that's number one. Number two, advocacy. So we've been quite active in terms of transparency, for example. And number three is the networking part. So today I think I'm super excited to have an amazing panel with us. So we have people from the Parliament, an MEP, we have a journalist, we have the Commission, and then we have Doru that has a really interesting tool. I had the chance of looking at it using data to really see what the political configurations are.
Introduction. Thank you, Yanis. I think some of you here in this room know me from a variety of situations, or some of you may know me from my previous role until last year at VoteWatch, which was my previous endeavor. What we do at U-Matrix is what I'm sure some of you know. We work with big data and we use technology, some would say artificial intelligence, that helps us understand what the direction of the EU policies are. So I'm going to be a bit provocative in my presentation. I will show you what we do and how we do it, and then you will see how this has an impact in your public affairs work. And then, of course, the panel will discuss also how these kind of things are being seen by the regulators. At this point, can I ask the technicians back there?
Just for the live stream.
I knew there was a reason to be on this side. All right, can I ask you to switch to the presentation, please? I'm not gonna keep your attention for long, just a few minutes. Just gonna start strongly with some charts to show you how we use the big data and algorithms to do what we are supposed to do, that is mapping the positions of the political entities on everything that goes through the EU decision-making process. And this picture here shows the positions of the national political parties. All of the national, each of those dots is one of the national political parties that are represented in the European Parliament, and the way they push and pull the EU legislation, which is about precisely the regulation of artificial intelligence. So, for example, those parties at the top there are the more influential ones. Those at the bottom are less influential. Those to the left are pushing towards a very strict regulatory approach when it comes to artificial intelligence. Those to the right there, they are more free market oriented, and they want, let's say, laissez-faire sort of environment in the European society. And those in the middle, they have mixed positions. I just, this is a screenshot from our tool. There in the middle, you see the position of one of the big parties, the French Renew delegation there, just to give you an example. Now, all of this This picture is very important, obviously, because it gives us a very strong indication, a very accurate, very transparent of where each of these political entities stand on this topic of regulating artificial intelligence. The same can be done and the same is done for every single other topic that goes through the EU decision-making process. Based on what? Based on the legislative behavior, based on the way they vote, based on other legislative actions. Everything is public information. Everything is information that the public and the other institutions and the stakeholders need and do have access to. That's how democracy works. And this is one of the ways in which democracy is better served by having not only access to information, but also the ways to process the information, this information, to make sense of it so that you understand where they stand. Also, we'll have elections 1 year from now. No? So this is very relevant information for the public at large, not only for the public affairs professionals, to know what the members of the European Parliament have done and the way they have pushed the legislation. Now, this is an example, as I have shown you. This can go, this exercise of using big data and algorithms can go even further than that. It can help us, combined with other data that we gather from the society, can help us even predict with a certain margin of error. Of course, nothing is perfect. I'm just being a bit provocative. It can help us predict what the next parliament is going to do. Not only this parliament, but also the next parliament after the European elections that will take place 1 year from now. So I'm just going to give you an example of our current predictions. I'm just going to show 3 topics. The first one there is a call for a moratorium on some of the legislation that, according to some of the politicians, put too much pressure on the European economy. Such a call was rejected in this parliament by a margin of 20-something votes. This is what you see, the light blue pillar. The projections using all the big data and technology are showing us that in the next parliament, such a call, we have a margin of a majority of 50-something votes in the next parliament. So you see how far in the future you can project how the political process is going to go. Now, of course, this does not take into account people's changing views in the meantime. There's a lot of campaigning. There is going to be a lot of debate in the public space. We're just showing what the balance of power is at this point in time so that both the public and the public affairs professionals know where they stand and have a clear vision of, let's say, the debates, the camps in the debates. And the same can be done for any other subject, like on health or other policies. Again, there is a margin of error here, of course, and that's how this works, but it is much better than nothing. And it does not exclude the human input and the human qualitative analysis. And this is what I'm going to say in my next slides, where we are trying to figure out how what we can see in the future. And we can easily conclude that the artificial intelligence helps us in our public affairs work because it makes it easier to analyze big volumes of data. It helps us filter the noise, filter the overcrowding of the information space, because this is what we're seeing and this is what we'll be increasingly seeing in the future. Too much information coming from all sources that would tell us that the politicians or the regulators or the commission will do this and that. No, the big data, if it is done, if it is processed properly, will tell us what it is noise and what it is actual accurate information. Therefore, it also increases accountability of the institutions and strengthens the democratic process in general. But that being said, the human insights, so do not fear, those of you who work in public affairs, do not fear, the human insights will not be replaced by artificial intelligence. The humans will still be needed because, you know, someone still has to do the meetings, someone still has to do the strategy, both in the private and also in the institutions. No. So we're seeing not a competition, but rather increasing complementarity between artificial intelligence and the human input in the future. Now, we estimate that in a number of years, we can expect the artificial intelligence to take over not only the process of analyzing information, but also of producing information. I don't need to tell you about the ChatGPT, which produces a lot of information. There will certainly be other tools which will produce a lot of information, but it also post it on the market. So many of the communication campaign will probably be done automatically by artificial intelligence driven assistants. Maybe, some of the politicians, some of the MEPs, some of the interest groups, and maybe even some of the institutions will resort to such tools in the future. It is just a matter of time. Some of these entities will have the upper hand because they will develop them faster than the others. And they will be able to produce and to put in the public space and post information much faster than others. But then this will become a common practice. Everyone will probably catch up with this. And then we'll have the big challenge. The big challenge will be that there will be an overcrowding of the information space with information produced precisely by such artificial intelligence tools, which will decrease the credibility of these tools. So we'll have the enthusiasm wave and then the skepticism. And then probably at this point, the regulators will be asked to come into place and try to do something about it and deal with this info chaos that we can expect probably in a few years, if not faster than that. So just to sum up, I think the artificial intelligence will take over the process of both generating the information, but also analyzing a lot of the information in the public space. Of course, we're not talking about legislation as such. We're talking about the debates. We're talking about the public debates. The artificial intelligence, also from our experience, finds it very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult to process details of the legislative acts, to process amendments drafted by the parliamentarians, for example, to the text proposed by the Commission. You cannot do that. You still need actual experts, human experts, to do such a thing. But whatever is, big macro communication is likely to be realistically and to be provocative taken over in a number of years by the artificial intelligence. But is this a good news or a bad news? Well, it depends how you look at it. There are challenges and opportunities, obviously, and this is what we will discuss in the panel. But I believe, as I said, that we see more complementarity than competition between the PA professionals and artificial intelligence, and the PA professionals will be able to simply use artificial intelligence and focus on what it is important and maybe even what it is more pleasant in this job, that is strategizing and do the human interaction work, the human meetings without which this profession would not exist. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dora, for that. So for any questions, we will have the discussion later. But now I'd like to invite the panelists to join Teresa on stage, kick off the panel discussion, and then we'll have the Q&A.
Yes. Thank you, Yannis, and thank you, Doru. Here you are. Thank you, Doru, for this insightful presentation. So generative AI takes all the headlines these days, but I think for us, public affairs professionals, the predictive, the strategic power of AI is more important, no? So I think this is a fascinating topic, and at least for me, reason is because when I started 20 years ago, AI wasn't a thing. So we weren't using AI to do advocacy. So back in the days, advocacy was very much traditional advocacy, was direct outreach, so face-to-face meetings with policymakers, and bringing position papers, which we were thinking and writing on our own. But nowadays, AI seems to be the game changer for us, public affairs professional. So I did think of asking ChatGPT to draft some lines, opening lines, and questions. But then I remembered, the case which everybody knows, the US lawyer who asked GPT to help him on a case, and then he quoted the 6 non-existent judicial decisions. So I thought, no, let's go back to the traditional style and think of an opening line. So thank you again, Yannis. We'll explore the intersection of AI and policymaking. So the impact that AI has on public affairs. So is AI reshaping our world? Will our jobs become obsolete one day? And to do this, yes, I'm really happy to introduce this wonderful panel. So we have Carlo Ressler, Croatian member of the Parliament, the European Parliament, from the EPP. You are a member of LIBE, that we all know had joint responsibility on the AI Act together with IMCO, and you were also vice chair of the Special Committee on Artificial Intelligence. We then have Kilian Gross, 23 years in the Commission, so Head of Unit, Artificial Intelligence, Policy Development and Coordination at DigiConnect. And basically, you are one of the architects of the AI Act. And then moving to Luca Bertuzzi, Tech Editor at Euractiv. You oversee a team, an international team, Berlin, Brussels, and Paris. And you have been reporting on the AI Act, so insightful, interesting articles. So I guess you are the reporter, the Brussels reporter on the AI Act. We have 45 minutes ahead of us, and we thought to structure this talk like that. So first round of questions on the policy and politics around AI. The reason, to be honest, is even though the margin of maneuver to influence the AI Act is very slim because trilogues have started, just with the Commission and the Parliament, it looked like a lost opportunity, no? Not to talk about the policy, to be honest. And then we'll have a second round when we focus on the impact of AI on public affairs, and then the floor will be yours. So, should we start with Mr. I'll call you with the first name, so Kilian. So, is the AI Act, can the AI Act help the EU compete, probably win, hopefully, the global race on AI, knowing, mindful about the Chinese and the American leadership?
Thanks a lot for the question, and thanks for the invitation. I think indeed it's a very interesting topic, and we, of course, in my unit, we always found it a very interesting topic, but since ChatGPT, the whole world finds it a very interesting topic. It's all over the place in all media, in all news magazines, and I think it deserves this attention because it's a groundbreaking technology, so I'm happy to discuss with you a bit today. We have always in the Commission, we had this two-pronged approach, because one side is that we want to support AI, so we have a coordinated plan, we want to have 20 billion public-private investment, and the other one is we want to hedge it against the risks. We think it goes together because we need AI for the climate change, we need AI to cover for the environmental challenges, for the future of our work, for a number of reasons to stay competitive. But as well, there are risks, and we think we need a sound legal framework. And we think that this legal framework, which is the core of your question, can help to be competitive. It will not be the only tool, but it will be an important tool because first, it's an internal market legislation. So we will have one legislation instead of 27. So we will not have bits and pieces everywhere. We will this time, when this new technology comes, we will not wait until everybody starts to legislate and then try to harmonize this. We have one common framework that I think is a good news for our startups. We will have legal certainty because we see there is a lot of work now going on in other places in the world as well, because at the latest since ChatGPT, I think everybody woke up. The White House will do a hackathon over the summer. They are thinking, you have heard, Sam Altman was called into Congress to give report. California is thinking about legislation. Brazil is thinking about legislation. There is a lot of international activities. We will have legislation and we will have certainty what is going to come. And last but not least, what is very important for us is it will allow us the uptake, because to make AI a success, you need both sides. You need the supply, you need good AI, which is offered on the market, but you need as well undertakings which take up the AI, or citizens which dare to use it. And there we still have quite a way to go in Europe, because I think currently, in 2021, according to our statistics, we had roughly 8% of European undertakings were using AI. We want to achieve 75% by 2030. I think the Act will help us to give this legal certainty and create a market.
Thank you. So you don't think it's better to leave AI to develop first? There are other regions which have decided not to legislate, no? The UK, which is at the doorstep, said we're not legislating.
Well, it's a choice. You can do different things, but you see the two biggest competing blocks, the Chinese, they have started to regulate on generative AI for different reasons. It's a bit separate. I wouldn't immediately compare this with our legislation. But the US are seriously considering this, and there is a lot of initiatives now in the TTC, on the G7. So I think it's not just Europe who's scared. And remember one moment we had as well already in Europe, we had this kind of AI moment when, for instance, in the Netherlands, the government stepped back because the AI system which was used by the public administration produced horrible mistakes. What would happen to the technology in Europe if we would have this kind of mistake, and we would only then afterwards try to rectify it and to gain back trust?
Thank you. Following on to Carlo, Parliament, I think you call the AI Act as an historical act, and other people call this landmark legislation, a milestone, not just for you, for the entire world. So basically, is the AI Act the new GDPR? Are we setting the template? Are we inspiring the rest of the world?
In sense that the expectation is that the others will probably, as we heard already, to some extent follow. Yes, I think that we will see definitely the Brussels effect. In effect, actually, we are already seeing it, and this is something that is definitely going to happen. Different jurisdictions may choose some different elements, but in the end, I think that when you look at the global debate, when you look at the people who are really into this tech business also, that it is almost unanimous that we need at least some basic rules, that we need some thresholds, that we, especially those who understand it from this tech perspective, how powerful this tool is, that we need at least some fundamental frameworks that will really enable us to use all the potentials of the AI, of the really central technology of the whole digital transformation, but also that will at the same time minimize the risks that without any doubt really exist. But besides the part with the legislation, I really think that it's important for all the different fields, different professions, different areas of human life to really be to understand that it's really that there is no area of human life that in the end won't be changed, that won't be affected, and that we won't be affected really swiftly. And that's why I really think it's good, and I'm glad to be here to accept your invitation, but also to learn something new and to allow me also to explore different ways of how it's possible to look at the impact of AI in this really specific field of public affairs, of communication, of politics, because not so long ago, I think that we were in the position where we used to believe that these are the areas in which it will be more difficult to automate, in which it will be more difficult than in some other simpler jobs to really use the AI. But nowadays, and especially after the development of ChatGPT, we can see that this is really not the case, and that really in this field, in the field of creation of narratives, storytelling, if you wish, these new tools will really be very important.
Thank you, thank you. We'll go back to that in the second round. But as Kilian mentioned, G7, so I thought to you, Luca, so Euractiv recently covered recent initiatives from Vestager, Commissioner Breton, so the Code of Conduct and the AI Pact. What's your take on those initiatives?
Yeah, thank you. So let me just start by saying that indeed the narrative around AI has really changed in the past month, even if you consider from the past year. I remember I was virtually the only tech reporter covering the AI Act. Now we have attention also from major publications from the other side of the pond. And I think the narrative also changed in terms of timing. What we used to hear was that the EU is moving ahead of with something that isn't even there yet. And now everyone is saying, you know, are you moving fast enough? So it really turned the conversation upside down. And also, what we are seeing is that there is also a competition over the governance of AI. I mean, you mentioned the UK, but recently the Prime Minister proposed to have this sort of CERN for AI and an international agency on the blueprint of the atomic energy one. So what we are seeing is leaders are trying to sort of shine under the generative AI spotlight. And that's the same for EU leaders. I understand we are at the phase of the mandate where everyone is sort of updating their CV and trying to figure out what they will do next. But just to give you an idea, as reporters, we were first invited to a briefing with Cabinet Vestager about the code of conduct. Then we were invited on the same day, but earlier in that day, for a briefing from the cabinet of Breton. And then on the same day, we heard Jourova say that generative AI should be labeled in the code of practice on this information. So my question is, who does this competition help? I mean, probably Kilian is in a hard spot because he received different instructions from different cabinets, so I really wouldn't want to be in his shoes. But let me just say this regarding international alignment, because so the code of conduct, for those who don't know, is this idea of establishing a sort of governance framework within the G7, and it was announced during the TTC. There has already been some strong alignment with the US concerning key concepts of AI with this AI roadmap and these concepts of risk and trustworthiness. At the same time, though, we are seeing that the US is trying to water down the AI convention of the Council of Europe. So that doesn't really speak to transatlantic alignment to me. So it's interesting that that has sort of flown under the radar completely. And the second point is, you were saying before that there isn't a lot of space to lobby on the AI Act. Well, actually, I disagree, especially for what concerns foundation models. There is a lot of space because, I mean, the Commission text on this was very thin. The Council basically proposed to kick the can down the road. So when you establish a sort of initiative, when you start talking to companies like in the AI Pact, you should also be aware that this might become a venue for them to push their views, since we are now at trilogue stage.
Thank you, Luca. I think a couple of words are music to our ears, no? There is margin, maybe. So before we go to the second round, I can't stop by asking, is the divide between the Parliament and the Council and Commission, there are a couple of interesting items where positions seem very different. So how do you foresee the next discussions? Is the divide too wide, or is the to Parliament or Commission?
I mean, you all know the positions from both of the institutions. We are now in the stage where we really hope that these differences will in the end be smaller and smaller until we reach the agreement with which everyone will be in the position to be satisfied. Also, in that I include the Commission, because this is really something that, I mean, if there is any topic that goes beyond some kind of interinstitutional bickering, then this is the one. And I really think and hope that until the end of the year, preferably, but in any case, before the end of the mandate, we will have something that is really tangible, something that is concrete, and something that will pave the way for others and other legislatures that are already now thinking about going in the similar directions.
Thank you. Should we move on now to the focus of our discussion, where Doro, you'll come in? So, impact of AI on public affairs profession. So, as you said, no, is AI a complement or a substitution to actually human skills? I think that's one of the key aspects. So, will AI replace policymakers, journalists, lobbyists? And just to open this second round, I read that at the beginning of 2023, a AI researcher from the Stanford University, John Ney, so he drafted a paper and he showed that GDP as an aptitude for corporate lobbying. So he tested his theory by inputting US bills to check the relevance that those bills had on sectors, on companies actually. If the bill was relevant, then the system was asked to draft letters to congressmen with amendments, which it did. And what I found interesting is the fact that the accuracy rate in guessing if the bill was relevant was 75.3%. So an automation of analysis of the impact on the legislation on a sector, and then drafting amendments, which is our job. So with this in mind, I would ask Kilian first. So do you, your office, your team, use ChatGPT? Who's behind the impact assessment and the text that we analyze? Are you using it?
I can assure you that the text has not been written by ChatGPT already because it was published before the release. And I hope that the amendments which we received so far have not been written by ChatGPT neither, but this is not for me to answer. No, joke aside, I think obviously what you say is very true and very relevant. This will change fundamentally not only the job as a journalist, but or the job as a public consultant. I think all desk workers will be affected by this in a way or another. But what we see in the Commission is that these systems will assist. They are assistance systems. They cannot really replace a human judgment or a human relation. So what we will see is, I think, an incredible increase in efficiency. So you will be able to produce just much more because you will be able to digest more information or to produce more output. And the Commission, of course, tries to embrace this as well. So we want to be there a bit the front runner and an early adopter. But as well, of course, we see a little bit the risk. So we had inside the Commission a first discussion on how to use AI because, we use it already. We have, for instance, an internal translation system for AI, which works pretty well. We have as well a system to look at legal cases or features. Publico, we call this. So this is another one which is very nice. But these are internal systems, and this is another important feature. So and we work on others. So for the future, for instance, to organize data and competition cases or to prepare, for instance, the feedback exercise of citizens to structure the information. But this will not replace a human reading this, but it will be much easier if the information is structured and basically processed and then to read it instead of processing everything by yourself. Therefore, there will be this interplay. But we see, of course, certain risk as like I think any corporate. And these risks are related, and that is what we give as guidance to the staff. Take care of the privacy of the data and of the secrecy of the data, because if you give data to the prompt, and this works with an API, the data is out. So you need to be sure that what you give there is not confidential, because the system will learn otherwise what we are doing. Second, be aware that the system can hallucinate, that it can just invent cases. So never send something without it being properly controlled, of course. Be aware that there may be copyright violations. We cannot afford this as an institution, so check this whether this has been truly verified. So these are things which I think are essential, and of course, for important, very sensitive items, don't use it, because this will still be reserved, I think, to the humans. These are, if I want to be in a very rough nutshell, I think the basic advices we would give.
Thank you. So sensitive information. Accuracy, and then the whole concepts about infringement of copyright, because actually the content is not attributed back to the owner. So that's very interesting. Moving to Carlo. So question is again: is your office using generative AI? And I'm thinking, so when you have a legislation on your table and you want to understand if the legislation is impacting a sector, does it conduct research? And if so, do you reduce the need of meeting us, the lobbyists, because anyway, research will be done by the system?
Well, I'm still quite reluctant, not to say that I really don't see the huge potential that is really developing before our eyes. But I would say that it also depends on the country to some extent, also where you come from and where like some specificities and particularities are different. And that even more than this, the skills are really important. I don't have the impression that you can really use that tool so accurately if you're not properly trained. If you don't have something like a really in-depth training of how to use all the different possibilities. So to sum it up, I really think that we are somewhere in the stage as we were in the mid 1990s or beginning of 1990s with the development of the internet, where we all saw that really at that time people who were really into it, they saw the potential. They saw that it will be possible to use it for so many diverse things. But now with these perspectives of looking 30 years after that, you can see even in that kind of interviews from that time that even those who were really insiders in that could not even imagine what will the use of internet be. So I would say, even from my personal experience, that for me it is difficult to now to really see the exact way in which, for instance, ChatGPT is going to be used. I can see that it definitely has that kind of transformational potential that will be very relevant very soon, but I don't have that personal experience of really understanding in which ways. And I see this as an issue in which we would really need to do it together, to go through some kind of education, to go through some kind of trainings, to go through discussions on how it is possible to use it and how it is possible to use it accountably, but also efficiently. Because nowadays, my impression is really that if you don't know exactly what you want to achieve, that it will be almost useless.
Thank you so much. We can discuss later, I hope, the human element, interaction, the new skills required if we want to use AI. A lot we can leverage later. Last two questions, and then floor is yours. So think about questions. So to Luca is, so Uber threatened taxi drivers, Airbnb threatened hotels. Is AI a threat to your profession? I read over the weekend that the German tabloid Bild made 200 redundancies. Editors, because it says AI tools such as ChatGPT could make independent journalism better than it was ever, or replace it. So, is it a threat?
Right. Well, I'll start by saying that if you think that AI can replace journalists, you have the wrong idea of what a journalist is. A journalist is not sitting behind a desk and taking a press release and turning it into an article. Being a journalist means speaking to sources, and I don't see ChatGPT calling anyone from the Commission, the Council, or the Parliament anytime soon. I'll second what was said before, that AI can help. It's a productivity tool, really. If you receive 80 pages document, it can probably help you analyze it, which is what most consultants and public affairs professionals try to do, and we at Euractiv do, because we see this as a service that we do for stakeholders and policymakers. So I definitely see a space where AI increases productivity for journalists. It can help, there are a serious overlaps also in the public affairs space. For instance, why do you have to spend 2 hours watching a parliamentary hearing if there is an AI that transcribes it and summarizes it for you? At the same time, you still need expertise to be able to spot when something is relevant and if the AI got it wrong. Because I mean, it's not only hallucinations, which of course, as a journalist, are the most important concern when you talk about using AI, because our responsibility is to be accurate 100%, not 90%, 100%. But I would say that there is also a need for journalists or public affairs professionals to be able to spot what is actually relevant in all these overload of information that we are going to receive and we receive every day. So, I mean, I don't see this replacing my job. I feel safe. But I see this as perhaps undercutting some of the low-end jobs, like the entry-level journalists that are, or consultants that are, given the more pedestrian tasks, which can easily be automated.
Thank you. There was an interesting comment, no? Reading the transcript of a committee meeting, no? So what we do, I'm sure other agencies in town push for the same, is you need to go to and listen in. You need to go to the parliament. You need to sit in the committee meeting, because there is so much you can pick. just by being there, you need to feel the room, you need to feel the interventions. So there is a lot you can just get by reading or by analyzing data, but there is the intangible of just a judgment, basically, on reading the people.
I
who are
wish I
behind
had the
it.
time to do that.
We'll find. Thank you. So last question and then on you. So to Doro, interesting. There was so much you said which resonated. So yes, personal relationship. So which comes back, which just came back now, and then human insight. And but I would ask, so how much human input is still needed to put together these forecasts, the mapping you've done? How much human is there?
Enough. Enough also for the humans to feel safe that, as I said, that there will not be a complete change in the job structure, let's say. But I would agree to the analogy that was made with the explosion of the internet in the 90s and in the 2000s. I think this is the kind of explosion that we're going to see with the artificial intelligence here. And realistically speaking, a lot of the work will be done. A lot of the research work, a lot of the content creation work will be done by artificial intelligence. And I think we have to, be both realistic and pragmatic, because the upper hand in the future, in the next few years, will belong to those who understand that this is going to happen. This is not a phenomenon that you can stop, just as you couldn't stop the evolution of the internet. You can turn it to your advantage if you know where it is going, if you know exactly the kind of activities, the kind of work that the AI will do, and you adapt to be able to govern the AI, to use it to your advantage, to be the manager of the AI, not try to fight against it. If you try to fight against it, you lost the battle, guaranteed. Yeah, you just have to adapt your job, whether you are a journalist, whether you are a communication person. It's going to be a bit harder for the legislator. Of course, this does not apply in the commission, because there, as you rightly pointed out, there are very different kinds of considerations that you need to take into account, not only the legal ones, but also the political sensitivities. You have to navigate between the commissioners, between the parliament and the council. That's a different kind of operation there, which I would find it very hard to imagine that the AI can do. But the other kind of work, as I said, the basic research, as you pointed out, the entry-level research, realistically speaking, we have to expect this to happen. Another thing that AI will not be able to do, and certainly not in the first stages, is read the emotions. As Teresa, you pointed out, if you are in the room, you feel the people. It's beyond the words that are being produced, and that can be scrapped by the AI to understand what they're trying to do. If you also look at the emotions, you can understand more. You can read between the lines. This can happen whether you're in a meeting of the trilogues, in a meeting in the commission, or in the parliament. Indeed, those emotions, can tell you a bit more. The strength with which an opinion is said matters. But don't be overly optimistic about that too, because that too can be detected at a certain point in time. Later on, at a second stage, but it's also not impossible. I think that's what I can answer at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora. So I think we have 15 more minutes now. So plenty of time for you to ask questions. Please state your name, affiliation, and even the recipient of your question. So floor is yours.
Hi, Nick Steinwand. I work with Euroelectric. We're the Association for the Electricity Industry in Europe. My question is pointed probably more at the two institution officials here. With the elections coming up next year, we already mentioned this, information chaos or info chaos coming up, being overloaded with information on social media and whatnot from AIs. How worrying is that in terms of how much wrong information can be created and distributed at a breakneck pace for the elections coming up, and how much is that affecting your strategy going forward?
My impression is that what is going to be affected more is exactly that, the pace in which the new narratives and new responses are possible. And I'm not sure whether already for this elections in 2024 this will really make a substantial difference, because we've seen it already in 2019 that that there is, and it is going to be expected for the next year as well, there is a lot of information, a lot of different information, a lot of fact checkers trying to check, but I hope that in the future with the AI it will be possible to improve and not to enhance only the quantity of the information, but really its quality. And I'm not so certain that this is going to happen already in 2024.
Perhaps just to add, this is of course a discussion which we have. There are the European elections, but there are of course as well the elections in the US, which will be a gigantic campaign. We know this. And I think it's just as you pointed out, the phenomenon is not new. It will be, as quite often with this technology, it will be scaled because we will bring it up to another scale because the possibility to generate artificially text of a high quality can allow you what was called the trolls in the past to bring it to a different level. So I think there will be certainly some discussions whether when we look at the transparency requirement, Article 52 at the labeling, whether we should kind of improve this a little bit further in order to make it easier for fact checkers or for others to identify what has been synthetically generated. We will need to see where we land there in the trialogue, but it will certainly be something to be looked at and to be discussed.
Great, thank you. The lady here.
Yes, thank you. Marie-Elin Kovanes. I'm a communications director in SEAP, European Chemical Industry Council, the largest trade association in Brussels. Our team has been exploring AI for quite some time. We've been exploring it since I think ChatGPT arrived in December. When it comes to generative AI for images and videos, so we've been playing a lot with Midjourney and Runway. Obviously, these are the go-to sources now for image and video generation. However, and this is also the feedback from my peers, from other associations, no one really dares publish any of those images generated by those tools yet, because of course this is still a gray zone when it comes to copyright infringement, which I think we also discussed. So what's your view on this? I mean, what is now the best practice, and if any, in this regard, or we have to wait I don't know, a few more years until we've got some legal certainty on what is how we can responsibly publish images and videos generated by those tools on our websites. Thank you.
Thank you. Should we take also the second one? So we group a couple. Actually. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sebastian Rodriguez. Maria stole my question. It was a little bit on, it was going in that direction, but maybe my backup question would be for Doru, because you represent the industry here. This is a conversation about industry. You are creating the tech, and maybe that question is for you so that the policymakers can also listen to you. Do you think that with this new methodology approach proposed by the Commission, your level of compliance is gonna go up significantly? Maybe you will be in this area of high risk. You will be operating in that area of high risk, and will that increase the level of compliance? And if that's the case, would that be the reason why we see more and more investment on AI in the US and not so much in Europe? Because just the level of compliance and the red tape is going to be so high here. So what's your view from the industry? Thank you.
Dora, do you want to take both?
Yeah, I think it's a good point to make the comparison with the US, because in the US, and you always have to look at them, they are much more advanced here. What we're doing here and what we try to do here is, very, very low level compared to what they have here. Of course, the regulation there is also very different. But it's not only about the regulation, it's also about the experience that they have. They have started many more years before us here. And it's also the mentality and the culture, and I have to say also the democratic spirit that they have in the US. It's a different sort of governance there than we have here. The EU institutions have, traditionally they have struggled with the democratic deficit. And the interest of the public is lower now. So this is what the Americans have the advantage. But I think we have to learn from them in this respect. I think we have to learn from them not only in the techniques that they use, but also in how they use the technology and the artificial intelligence and everything to create and to strengthen the democratic process there, and to create interest in the citizens and to provide accurate information. Of course, the discussion of whether you know, how do you make use of this information, and as the other people have said, it is very important to have the experts on top of the information so that they know what it means and how they report it, because sometimes indeed if it goes in the circuit, if it goes to the people who don't know what they're doing and don't know what the information is, it can be reported completely differently, and it can turn the whole thing to a negative side. So I think we have to learn from those that are more advanced than us, and there are challenges there are opportunities, but I think there is an opportunity for the European democracy, especially of the next year's elections.
Great. And then the question from Sefik, so videos. Any views?
Yeah, on copyright, I think that is going to be one of the main questions that we'll see in the coming years. And I guess the answer we will get is private enforcement. And on that, the US is much more advanced than Europe, although now with the collective redress directive, I think we will see some class actions on that, but we'll probably see results from lawsuits that are ongoing in the US. I think there is one in the UK as well, to bring some form of certainty. What is clear is that private enforcement privileges the biggest interests. And those that have deeper pockets to launch lawsuits. Perhaps with the class actions, we might see some changes in that. But indeed, who is undercutting generative AI right now, again, is not the Taylor Swift or Disney. It's the small rock band that will not emerge because you will have many more songs on Spotify that are generated by AI, or the artists that will have to compete with Midjourney AI. And I think if this is not handled carefully, there is a whole generation of artists and content producer that will be undercut by this technology.
Great. Yanis, how are we doing on time? Still have a few time. Okay. Should we take another round? There is the gentleman, and then same row, the lady.
Pierre Gröning speaking for the German chemical and pharmaceutical industry, VCI. I'm just coming from an event which was about new genome techniques. I mentioned this because it's a breakthrough technology. I mean, it's already out there, but Europe is lagging behind. And I mention this because there's a lot of skepticism with consumers about it, linked, of course, mostly to the 90s and the GMO debate. And so the question was like, at that event, so how can we also convince consumers that this is different, first of all, and secondly, this is positive? So I'm just wondering now, putting that discussion about acceptancy also now on AI, if today you would start labeling that my tool, looking at Doru, is generated with the help of AI, or this article has been supported with analysis of AI, or this piece of legislation has been supported with the help of AI, what do you feel would be the level of acceptance by audiences, voters or consumers?
Great, thank you. Should we have the second one, and then we'll take Zoe?
Yes, hi, Zoe Karamitsudzira from Ruud Pedersen Public Affairs. There were a few mentions here about job losses in all different industries. Are there any conversations being had about how to make sure big swaths of people are not left behind as we keep going through development? I know that through all of time, whenever there is a technological breakthrough, this happens. How have we maybe learned from the past in coming up with a more inclusive solution and a way to make sure that we don't have a kind of big decline as we have seen in the past?
Thank you. So first is on acceptance. Maybe, Carlo, you want to take it?
Well, on the acceptance, confidence of the public, I would say that regardless of of some kind of fear or concern that you will have that. My impression is really that after some time and after some initial uses, this skepticism will not be really so relevant. So my take on this is that very soon, similarly as it happened, for instance, with Google Maps or with any other tool that you had, there is a skepticism from some people, but then in the end, when you realize once, twice that it is really helping you, and that in the end, the aim of the tool is not really to be completely perfect, but just to be slightly better than a human is in a certain field, and that is sometimes not so difficult. If we want to be honest, then people really understand, and individuals really understand that this is a tool that can really be helpful.
Thanks a lot. And perhaps on the question on the skills, this is of course an important concern. I mentioned in my intro statement that we have this coordinated plan that we look as well at skills, because it is true, and some other panelists have already mentioned that it will increase efficiency, yes, it will, but it will as well perhaps make certain more routine tasks superfluous, and that will affect certain jobs. And it will, therefore, I think what we do and what we need to do is really in upskilling and reskilling. So this must be a comprehensive exercise where we look as well whether the people for the job market, going to the job market, come to the job market, have the right skills, the young ones, but as well those who are in the labor market, because I'm still optimistic that there will be quite some jobs, but they may look a bit different, and they may even look for other qualities and other qualifications. So we need to take this into account, that we don't leave important parts of the population behind us. I think that's an important concern.
Thank you. Should we have a final round of questions? Okay, Yanis. Anyone? Yes.
Good evening, and thank you to the organizers. Pierre Sultana, I'm working for Animal Health Europe, the manufacturers of veterinary medicines. And the question comes from a recent experience. I think as public affairs, we are always looking at MEPs to co-host events. So we've asked ChatGPT recently, whom in the European Parliament is a veterinarian? Yeah. The answer gave us a couple of names: farmers, doctors, but those whom we know are veterinarians were not on the list. So what does it need to work? And is there a question of GDPR compliance here?
Okay, thank you. One more, and then we wrap up. No? Okay. Actually, just to have a second one, I would ask, so to Carlo, was interesting, no? There was presentation, MEPs, behavior, prediction of votes. So how do you react when you hear people telling how you will vote and how likely you are on a certain path? And then on your matrix side, there is also some scoring, no? MEPs scoring, positive, negative. So is this judgment positive for democracy? Just your reaction on, I mean, can you change your mind actually in your journey?
So, I mean, regardless of the AI tools, my impression is that most of you who are really in this public affairs jobs, that you probably can predict quite well, not only on the voting patterns, but also based on the belonging to a certain political group. In probably 90-95% of the votes, how will a certain MEP vote? So in that sense, I don't see this as something substantially new, but I understand that with big data, with more advanced algorithms, you can predict even better than only on the basis of your like normal knowledge. But then obviously there is also the thing that politics, but life in general, it's sometimes very complex, very difficult, and people make irrational choices, people make emotional choices, emotional votings, especially before the elections. And I'm certain that AI algorithm can definitely collect part of that, but in the end, I mean, every individual decides on its own, and regardless of the fact that this was something that was already previously possible to be done, I think that AI algorithm will improve it, but not to such an extent that it will be really something that will force someone to vote as they don't want to.
And the second one, no, the inaccuracy and the GDPR that the Animal Association representative asked.
This is difficult for me to judge because the quality of the AI always depends on the quality of the data set. So what are the input data which have been given to the system? If the input data contains all the CVs of the MEPs, then it's astonishing that there's such an error rate. But that is difficult for me to see from the outside. Perhaps as well a word on from me as a closing remark on this possibility to influence. I think you're all right. I mean, for you as public affairs officials, if you have a limited constituency, you want to work with certain EU officials, with certain people in the parliament, members of parliament, that you will judge by yourself. But where I see, for instance, a huge potential for AI, and that you have seen with Cambridge Analytica as in the future to run campaigns, that you can be much more individualized, that you understand better your voters, that you can target much better your messages to individual people or smaller groups, so that you do not have this kind of very spread advertising, which doesn't really reach, but you can be much more fine-tuned. And there, this may, in this kind of advertising, not so much political advertising, but more commercial advertising, this may turn even to a level where this is indeed becomes difficult to take really free and well-informed decisions. So that's why we, for instance, propose to prohibit subliminal techniques. So if you start to look at how people react subconsciously and you try to manipulate them in their behavior, and we have seen this, for instance, there are already techniques that, according to your behavior, the pricing scheme changes when you want to buy something on the internet, because the system realizes, are you in a hurry, or what you have done bought before shows that you're not so price affine, but that you're really more into getting it straight away. So these things are, of course, starting to get, I think, a bit critical, because we need to think about how our society is based on free choices, free will, full responsibility as a counterpart, and therefore we need to make sure that we all have still the fair chances.
Okay.
Yeah, just a word on the AI and data protection, because I do think that there is an underlying tension between the fact that an AI system needs to be accurate and representative and robust, and some principle of data protection, for instance, the data minimization principle. So if you look at how sensitive data is dealt in the AI Act, I think it's Article 10.5, you see that tension coming to life. This will be for AI developers to figure out, but enforcers, the regulators will have a key role to play there to sort of indicate where to draw the line. And in this regard, I think it's quite promising that a few of the authorities that are already pitching themselves to be the AI Act enforcers are data protection authorities. If you take the CNIL, the Spanish, the Italian DPA. So I think that's probably where you will have to run the full circle.
I think time is almost done. Yes, I would have asked what are the ideal qualities of a public affairs professional, because we talked about skills and quality. So actually my own question, just to learn more today, is it's a bubble, no? So we need to have new skills to use AI, but what are the features of the ideal public affairs professional in town? Can I ask all of you? So we can be even better. We're perfect as we are. Okay, we'll leave it for the drinks, no? I guess this answer. So it was a pleasure. I learned a lot. And my concluding thoughts, is that I feel relieved, because it seems I still have a job in the next few years. Second is good, because we will be more efficient. So everything we said is about efficiency, effectiveness, but this human element will stay. So it's a people business. So we need to know people. We need to create trust. We need to build a network over time, and this just not by done in a quick second online. And the third thought is I'm really curious to see how the AI Act ends if we are once again setting the global standard as we did in the past. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, SEAP. Thank you, Matrix. And I think now there are some drinks and where you can discuss more.
Absolutely. Big round of applause. Thank you so much. So thank you really to all panelists and all of you for joining us. At the start, when I did the small polling and we discussed about jobs, I forgot to also say we have a headhunter. So for all the public affairs people, that's another profession here. So one comment from my side, please go on the SEAP page and register. We have our AGM coming up in September. For all the members, you're most welcome to attend. And if you're not members, Valentin and I are here to share any other information. So thank you so much. It was one of the best discussions actually we had. And I promise I don't say that for all the events we do. So thanks to all the panelists and all of you. And enjoy the drinks.